This is a Condi Holosmith build, and I know what you're thinking, right? Condi Holosmith? That doesn't really work out too well. Well, yeah, Condi Holosmith is probably not the best because you're giving up a lot of the value of Prismatic Converter just to get Solar Focusing Lens, but there is a demand for condition engineer builds, and I find that this is one of the more fun ways to play a condition Holosmith. So take it with a grain of salt when I say something is good. It's all relative. Obviously, a power Holosmith is probably going to be a lot better, but if you did want to play a Condi NG, this is how you do it, or at least how I do it. So the idea of this is that you get Solar Focusing Lens, which is whenever you enter and leave your forge, which is like a kit that you get from being a Holosmith, you'll gain a buff which makes the next two attacks give burning and extra damage. So this is a hybrid build. I'm using Sinister, and that means I'm doing a lot of power and Condi damage in the build. So any kind of trait that gives might or vulnerability or even just damage and condition damage is going to be really good synergy for this build. So with the Solar Focusing Lens, you're going to be going in and out of your forge very often, and that's going to be giving you extra damage. Also, you're going to be having the forge skills, which mostly are power, but the photon blitz, the 4 skill, does a lot of burning damage. So that's kind of like the idea of the build, is why you go all Condi Holosmith, is the photon blitz mostly and Solar Focusing Lens, and just the fact that Holosmith in general has a lot of utility to it with the Holo Leap. So let's just get straight into the traits. So alchemy and inventions, as well as Holosmith. For alchemy, that's a pretty standard engineer trait line. You're going to be taking protection injection, which is going to give you protection, and you also have elixir E, which is going to give you more protection, and then that's going to scale very well with anti-corrosion plating. So whenever you gain protection, you will cleanse conditions. So instead of having Prismatic Converter, I went for the kind of like Inventions Alchemy synergy, where that gives you Condi Cleanse instead of the Prismatic Converter. And then because this is World v World, you have access to Cleansing Sigil as well. So you don't really need the Prismatic Converter, which allows you to play the Condi Holo build. So you've also got protection whenever you use a heal skill, I believe, in Inventions. Yep, whenever you use a heal skill, you will gain protection, and you will also cleanse a condition. So your heal skill, which is Elixir H, gives protection, which also gives another set of protection, and then it'll cleanse a Condi. So you cleanse 3 conditions with your heal skill there, which is pretty nice. And then whenever you gain protection, which is whenever you use a shield skill, whenever you get hit below 33% health, and whenever you are disabled, you'll gain protection. And this is really nice because you have a lot of defense against power because you have protection, and then you have a lot of defense against conditions because you have Condi Cleanse. So it's a very well-rounded build against all kind of things. And then you have sustain in the build as well because of compounding chemicals, which is whenever you gain a boon, you will heal. And the healing is pretty low, it's only 40, but when you gain stacks of a boon, for example, Might, it gives you multiplicative effects. So with HGH, this gives you a lot of synergy because HGH, whenever you use an elixir, you gain 3 might. So that's 3 procs of compounding chemicals. So whenever you use an elixir, you'll gain whatever boons you gain from that, plus 3 might, and that's what, 120-ish healing? So it can really add up over time because there are so many things that count as elixirs, such as Elixir E, such as the passive Elixir C, the passive Elixir B, and these don't just give you the might, they give you extra other boons, so they're healing you for a lot over time. The alchemy trait line gives you a lot, and the elixir gun as well. You've got like some of the skills in here count as elixirs, so they'll give you might, and yeah, the tooltips are kind of weird, but it gives you the HGH might here. And also, I didn't really mention this, but when you go into Forge, Corona Burst will give you 5 stacks of might because it pulses 5 times, which procs compounding chemicals 5 times, and it'll also reduce the cooldown of your elixirs and increase their duration. So HGH is really good. You could go for a Purity of Purpose, but it's going to give you a lot less might, which means you're not going to do as much damage. And I feel like without HGH might, which is a really good synergy for like hybrid builds because it gives you Condi damage and power, you're not really going to be doing as much damage as you need to really feel like you have an impact on fights. So HGH for sure is going to give you a lot more damage and synergy with the rest of your stuff. And you also have Soothing Detonation. So whenever you use a tool belt skill, you will heal nearby allies. And your Photon Forge, whenever you enter and leave it, that counts as using a tool belt skill. So it adds up to a lot of sustain over time, which makes the build very survivable because you have protection, you have Condi Cleanse, and you've got healing. So it's a pretty survivable build, right? So where do you get the damage on the build? That's what's important, because these 2 trait lines are pretty much defense. So you get the damage from Solar Focusing Lens, which we already went over. You're going to be getting that every time you go into Forge and you leave Forge. So often what you do is you go into your Forge, you do a big burst combo, and then you try to set up another combo as soon as you leave the Forge. And we'll go over like the actual skills that you'll use later. But then you have Crystal Configuration Zephyr, which is whenever you go into Forge and use the Hollow Leap skill, you will remove all movement inhibiting conditions, which is really nice for cutting off all of the cover condis you have, and then allowing you to cleanse the non-cover condis or the non-movement inhibiting conditions with your other condi cleanse. And then it'll give you super speed for 3 seconds. And since Hollow Leap is on a 2-second cooldown, you can pretty much get permanent super speed while you're in Forge as long as you're not going to overheat. And then you'll have to leave Forge and then you won't be able to get the super speed. And then finally, you have Vent Exhaust. This is going to give you more damage because whenever you dodge, you're going to do a small burn in the area, and that's going to reduce your heat and heal you. The reason why you don't use Enhanced Capacity Storage Unit, which would give you more might, which is really nice, is because there's like an anti-synergy between that and Solar Focusing Lens. Because with this, you can't really go in and out of your Forge often because you need to stay out very long for your heat to go down. But with Vent Exhaust, you can go in and out very often because you have so much control over your heat. So it's better with Solar Focusing Lens to take Vent Exhaust, and it's not like you're losing damage because you still get burning when you lose heat here. So I like Vent Exhaust. For the equipment, I take mostly Sinisters. You could probably go Vipers, but I like the extra burst that you get from Sinister. And then I make up for the loss of condition duration with the Balthazar rune, which gives you about 50% burning duration, because burning is your best condition on this build and your most common one. You do get a decent amount of poison, but the Poison Dart Volley already has really good poison duration on it, so you don't really get too much value from having condition duration on this build. So I go mostly Sinisters with Balthazar rune, and then on my pistol shield I go for Cleansing Doom, because the Doom is a nice cover condition that will also reduce their healing and just give you more damage. And because you're kind of low on HP on this build if you go full Sinisters, I go for a little bit of Carrion and Trailblazer. So I have like a Carrion pistol, and then I have like one, I think, Trailblazer trinket here. The reason for that is just the vitality. I want a little bit more vitality because you get a little bit from Balthazar rune, but otherwise you're kind of like sitting at 15 to 17,000 health. And with all that sustain in this build, it would really be a shame if you'd be susceptible to burst damage. So the health really helps you to get your sustain out before you die, and then once you can get your sustain out, it'll allow you to survive a lot longer. So I like a little bit more vitality there. So go mostly Sinisters and then go for the Vitality until you get a safe amount of health from either Carrion or Trailblazers, depending on which one you want. There are two kind of variants for the utilities that you can use. I like Elixir Gun and Elixir B for smaller scale fights, but if you're in larger fights, you could go for the Flamethrower kit, and then you could go for Elixir U. And the reason why you take U is for the stun break, because if you take B and Flamethrower, then you only have Elixir S as your stun break, and that means you're just going to be wasting your S a lot of time to stun break. So I like the Elixir Gun to give you the stun break with Elixir B, and that can also give you stability, but you can't give yourself stability if you're already stunned. And if you want to go for Flamethrower, then you can take Elixir U. But Elixir Gun is going to give you a lot more survivability, whereas Flamethrower is going to give you a lot more damage. So depending on the situation that you're in, you decide which setup you want to go for. I'm going to be showing mostly Elixir Gun for now, but I'll show a little bit of Flamethrower skills as well. But anyways, because you have HGH, you're going to be wanting to take a lot of elixirs. And Prime Light Beam is actually super good on Condition Holo, because when you're above 50% heat, so if you use a bit of your abilities, you can easily get to above 50% heat, and you use Prime Light Beam, it will leave down a burning field, and that does a lot of burning over time if your enemy is standing in it. So some things that you can do is you can actually CC your enemy in your Prime Light Beam field, and you're going to be doing tons of damage to them while they're CC'd. So I'll show a little bit of that later as well. But let's just go into the basic skills that I'm going to be using. So for pistol, you have your auto attack is just going to bleed. It's very basic, but it's kind of nice. If you have Elixir Gun, it's usually better to use the Elixir Gun auto attack, because that'll also give weakness and not just bleed. So I generally use Elixir Gun 1 instead of the pistol 1. But your pistol 2 is Poison Dart Volley, which is a very long duration poison, and it can get up to 5 stacks if you hit with all of them, and that does a lot of damage over time if it doesn't get cleansed. Then you have Stag Shot. This is just going to bounce between enemies and give blind and confusion. Not that good, but since it's a very fast animation, you can just throw it out there. Then you have your shield skills. The 4 skill gives you like this reflect, and you can cast it again, and that'll knock away enemies. You can use this for like combos. So like if you go up to someone, you can instantly cast the second part of Magnetic Shield, and you can CC them, and then from there you can go into like another combo ability. So it's a really good ability, the Magnetic Shield, because it has 2 effects to it, and that's the same thing for the Shield 5. The first effect is a block, so this one only blocks projectiles. If someone melee attacks you, you can just push them away. But with the Static Shield, it will block attacks and also stun melee attackers. And then before it finishes, you can also throw it, and it will daze enemies. So, and it'll do a little bit of damage. So it has 2 parts to it once again. So shield is very strong on Engineer, and because you have the Overshield trait, all of your shield skills will give you protection as well, and to nearby allies. So it's like cleansing and giving you protection, and just a lot of CC effects as well on the shield. So really strong. And then your tool belt skills, you just want to throw them at your feet. So mostly it's Toss Elixir H, which just gives protection, so it's going to cleanse and give regen and vigor. And then you have Toss Elixir B, which gives you stability, and you can throw that away at other people as well if you're not near them. And then you have Toss Elixir S, which is going to give you stealth, and you want to be able to run into your elixir tosses. So when you're playing around like the elixirs, you're usually moving around, so what you want to do is put the elixir in front of you so that you run into it, because it has a cast time. And then your F2 is going to be your stun break, which just gives, because it's an elixir, it gives might, and it'll give a little bit of regen as well. So that's pretty much your tool belt skills. They're all just elixirs really, and they give you might. So it's easy for you to get really high amounts of might on this build. As you can see, I've got 15 might right here on using 3 skills. So yeah, really strong. then your Forge. So Forge is very difficult to learn at first, but once you get the muscle memory for it, it's actually very easy to use Forge. So anyway, in the Forge, you're going to be gaining heat over time. If it gets to 100%, you overheat, you leave Forge, you lose access to Forge for a while, and you take a lot of damage. Overheating is almost always the wrong play. So what you want to do is you want to get to high heat, and then you want to leave Forge. But the thing is, when you enter Forge, you have 5 seconds before you can leave Forge again. So you never really want to enter Forge when you're high on heat, or you could potentially overheat without having a choice to leave Forge. So you have to be careful about that. You can dodge to lose heat, and that makes it a little bit safer. But yeah, you generally want to be in Forge and using a lot of high value skills, which are going to give you more heat. So the Holo Leap 2 is a really good skill. It gives you this like movement skill that gives you, as I said before, it gives you a lot of super speed and will remove conditions from you. So usually if you're not in range of someone, you'll Holo Leap 2 to get in range. And then what you'll do is you'll do Corona Burst, which is a very high value skill because it gives you, as you can see on the target, it gives a decent amount of damage. And then it does a second strike of that damage. So it gives 16 vulnerability if both hits strike. And then it gives you might, gives you a little bit of heat as well. But the thing is, the Corona Burst gives you heat over time. It doesn't give you the heat immediately. And the second strike of Corona Burst happens after a delay. So I can get to really high heat and still use Corona Burst. So if you look here, I'm at 90-ish heat, I'll use Corona Burst and then immediately leave. My heat maxes out, but I don't overheat. And that's because you can't overheat when you're out of Forge, but if you're gaining heat while you're out of Forge, then it just maxes out. So generally, yeah, when you're about to leave Forge, you want to use your Corona Burst, or you'll do this, right? You don't want to be doing this. When you see this, this is bad. So yeah, Corona Burst. With your rotation, you generally want to use like your Corona Burst last, and then go back into your pistol set, and you can be hitting with the last strike of the Corona Burst still. And then you've got Photon Blitz. So Photon Blitz hits really hard because it gives like 1 second of burn, but it can do like 8 stacks of it. And you can see here it did 2000 tick of burn there, and it's only got a 1 second duration. So it's not a long lasting condition, but because it's so high stacks and low duration, it's hard for people to play around it, because what are you going to do? You're going to cleanse the beginning of the 8 stack and only cleanse like 4 stacks of it, or you're going to cleanse the end after the burns have already kind of done a lot of their damage. So it's kind of like damage that they can't really play around other than dodging Photon Blitz. So yeah, you want to make sure that you land Photon Blitz. So what I like to do in my Holo Forge is I go in with the Leap, I use the 3 skill for Vuln, and then I use Photon Blitz. And that way I get the vulnerability on the Photon Blitz. Or if you think that the enemy is going to dodge, what you can do is, because Corona Burst usually is a high value skill, people want to dodge that, and they especially want to dodge the second hit. So if you use Photon Blitz as the second hit is coming out, they can dodge your Corona Burst and your Photon Blitz at the same time. So what I like to do against enemies who I know are playing, they're playing very much around my build, is I'll use my Corona Burst in melee range, and since there's so many animations going off, they can't really see what's going on, and they'll dodge. So they'll like dodge, and then I'll just auto attack. They'll dodge my Corona Burst, the second hit, and then I'll use Photon Blitz. And if they eat your entire Corona Burst, then they've got 16 vulnerability to eat your Photon Blitz with. And if they dodge the Corona Burst, then they eat the actual damaging skill, which is Photon Blitz. And obviously Corona Burst will still do damage because you've got power and precision on this build. But yeah, Photon Blitz is what you really want to hit. And it's only 10-second cooldown, so you can use it generally once or twice every time you go into Forge. And then you want to leave and do some pistol skills. And then you can kite, give yourself some elixirs, gain some might. And then you can go back in and repeat the process. So that's kind of like how the rotation works. You go into Forge, do the high damaging abilities, try to make sure that they land so that they don't dodge them. Don't stack them if you think you are going to be playing against someone who's going to dodge, and stack them if you do have like CCs that you can land them into. And then while you're waiting for your heat to go down, you can not only use the pistol skills and the elixir skills, but you've also got the elixir gun. So the elixir gun is going to give you super elixir, which gives you a little bit of Condi cleanse and some healing, and a light field, which you can use with your Hollow Forge leap to give you a light aura, which reduces incoming condition damage by 10%. Blast the super elixir with your Hollow Forge 5 holographic shockwave, which will give you a condition cleanse. And your shield 4 is also a blast, and so is your elixir gun 4. So if you really need Condi cleanse, you could do your super elixir into acid bomb into your Forge 5, and then you could leave Forge and use your shield 4, and that would give you 3 Condi cleanse. Well, 4, because the super elixir would give you an extra Condi cleanse as well. You have acid bomb, which will give an unblockable ticking AoE at the location, and it'll knock you back. So what you can do with acid bomb is you can use it to kite if you know how to do about face. So if you have free camera on and then you about face, and then you use like a skill that moves you backwards, you can kind of like use it forwards. So it's nice for kiting. But if you're in a situation where you don't want to use acid bomb to move, you can actually press weapon swap, and it will actually cancel the knockback animation, and you'll just stay in place. And then you'll just go into pistol, then you can go back into elixir gun. You can use fumigate, which will give poison and cleanse conditions from allies, but not from you. And then you have glue shot or glob shot, which will cripple the target, and it can bounce between the targets and just give out cripple, which is nice for chasing. And the auto attack just gives bleeding and weakness. So yeah, the elixir gun is a nice utility weapon set that you want to fill in the gap and give yourself a little bit of sustain in between your Forge burst combos. And then you got the flamethrower. So we're going to show the little bit of a flamethrower gameplay here in case you want to use that. Flamethrower is mostly damage on the kit. So you have your auto attack, which just gives out a little bit of power damage. You're not like fully, Zerker, so it's not amazing damage, but it's pretty good. And then it gives burning at the last tick. So it's a nice hybrid weapon. And then you've got Flame Blast, which is really good for kiting because you can use it behind you like this, and it'll give 3 burn. So there's like a projectile and then there's an explosion. So if you hit them with the projectile, so like if I shoot it beyond them, it'll hit for 1 burn, and then it'll explode for 2 burning. So if I don't hit them at all with the explosion, it'll just do 1 burn. If I only hit them with the explosion, it'll just do 2 burning. So if I do it right here, it won't go through them. So generally what you want to do with the Flamethrower 2 is shoot it through them, but just enough so that it blows up right on top of them. So kind of like this. And that's really nice because it does a long duration burn. And if they're already burning, then you can use Air Blast to give them another burn, but mostly it's used to knock back enemies. Then you have Napalm, which is a pulsing burn, very good for down bodies. And then you got Smoke Vent, which is just a no animation blind on yourself, which you can use to stomp. So the general combos that I like to do is I get my heat really high, and I'll go in, I'll do the Corona Burst, and then Photon Blitz, get some big damage, and then maybe I'll do a holographic shockwave into Corona, and then while they're CC'd there, they'll eat the Corona Burst, and they'll eat my pistol too. From there, I've got high heat, so I can use Prime Light Beam, and then I can CC them backwards into it after they've gotten knocked back from it already, and they can stand in that pulsing burn for even longer. And I can also put down my elixir gun to kite while I'm waiting for my forge to come back up, and I can go back in and just repeat. So that's kind of like the flow of the build that you want to do. It's kind of situational, but yeah, you go in, you do your heat stuff, you get high on heat, you leave, or you can dodge to remove your heat if you're really waiting to get that high value skill off before you leave. And then you go back in, you usually want to use your pistol 2 immediately because that's your highest damaging ability on this set. and you've also got tons of solar focusing lens proccing because you're constantly going in and out of your forge. And yeah, you generally don't want to just sit in forge because of that reason. You want to go in, go out, get extra solar focusing lens procs, and then do the same thing. Here is a 1v1 against a fresh air Ellie. One of the counters to this build, I said, was burst damage because you have a lot of sustained damage, and just hybrid builds in general are countered by burst. So you have to be very careful and use your shield skills liberally or aggressively to get that protection out there before you get bursted. And another thing that's really important against fresh air Ellies is this build is pretty much entirely projectiles. Like, just throwing your elixirs will get countered by swirling winds, and most of your damage is projectile, and that'll get countered by the Earth 4 on the focus. So yeah, there's very few windows of time where I can actually do damage in this fight, and that's really dangerous because if I can't counter pressure, then they're going to be able to free cast on me. So at this point, I've used a lot of my cooldowns and they're still very high on health. They're in their swirling winds, but I get a really good CC chain, which allows me to survive long enough to get close to them. I'm actually going to disengage right now because I wasn't ready to trade exactly. I think they had some of their defensives up still. And once I do get in range to trade, I'm able to... I get a really good burn combo off on them, and that allows me to get the kill. This is a 1v1 with a Soul Beast, which is very much a difficult matchup in World vs. World for any class really, because in World vs. World, Soul Beasts are just so selfish and busted because they have the protection uptime, which they can get really high with the World v. World stats. And protection gives them regen and damage reduction, and they have so many ways to stun break, so it's really hard for you to catch up to them, and their pet can just be hitting you meanwhile. So I have to play very aggressively because I'm basically on a clock, because I will not out sustain a Soul Beast that has permanent protection. So I am playing very aggressively, and I know that this player is actually playing around my photon blitz as well during this because I realized they kept dodging it. So I adjusted to that by using my Corona Burst and then waiting for them to dodge the second Corona Burst and then using my Photon Blitz. And that allowed me to play very aggressively, which allowed me to get them really low. And even though a lot of their sustain just comes passively, they still have to kite, which prevents them from counter pressuring me, which means that I can keep playing aggressively and taking advantage of my advantage. So at this point I need to finish off the kill, and I get some really good damage on them, and I see that they are out of their stun break there, so I land a really good Prime Light Beam, but they managed to get their cooldown back because they have pretty low cooldowns. They have a 30-second cooldown on that stability stance, so they're back up pretty high, but they've just used their heal. So I need to get them either dead or I need to just get some damage before their next heal skill. So I'm playing super aggressively, but I overheat because I'm not paying attention and I'm playing too aggressively. And from here it goes all downhill because, well, now that I'm on the back foot and now that I don't have the advantage, they can be free casting on me, and I don't have the... I'm very easily punished because as soon as they can start CCing me, I lose my sustain because I gotta be casting to get my sustain, and that eventually means I lose the duel. Here I'm in a 1v1 against a Core Guardian, which has a lot of burst damage. They pull me and they land a really long knockdown from the Bane Signet, so I immediately Elixir S that because I don't have my other stun break. And then I see that another engineer is engaging on me, so I go to the line of sight, no port spot, and I try to split the enemy. The NG comes up with me, so I start focusing them, but I am still playing very safely because they have a lot of burst damage too. So I'm using this tree as line of sight, and yeah, the Guardian is on me now, so I keep kiting them, and this becomes a three-way fight that I basically kite the engineer into like a 1v1 behind this terrain here, and I'm just trying to resustain and not die here. And it looks like, yeah, the enemy now is focusing the other one, so I can take advantage of this and jump on them from behind and see if I can get some kills. And so yeah, we pretty much killed the green team here, but now we gotta focus on the red, and I elixir S to avoid a lot of damage from those. And yeah, I used a shield 4 here to knock them back after they use their kind of like Revenant Sword 3 ability on me. I could actually use the shield 5 there as well, because any attack like that where you're evading and attacking at the same time, you'll get interrupted in your evade by the shield 5 because it stuns melee attackers. So that could have been good there, but yeah, I landed, oh my god, that's a really good burst there. So I prime light beamed, and then I knocked him back, and then I did my pistol burst. So that allowed me to get the kill on the scrapper there, which is really nice because now that evens up this fight. And yeah, the Soul Beast is now pretty low on cooldowns, and they're going to go into the down state. So this is pretty much how you want to play the Holosmith build. And if you like this kind of video, give it a like and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys next time.